It's a great stress reliever. It's amazing for serotonin production and
Serotonin.
then I I notice that I drop weight easier when I'm having, regular orgasms.
Welcome to the Soul Led Duo podcast, where we dive deep into everything human design and energetics. You'll find this podcast tailored especially for you if you are independent, spiritually aware, free spirit, excited to learn, grow, and experiment your way to your best life possible. Our empathetic, conversation driven style is here to help you tackle life's big problems, make them more fun, and have you feeling like you have a couple awkward best friends that just get you. Join us for each episode to decode your human design chart, talk lifestyle, parenting, relationships, and well, how to be more unapologetically you.
Something I want to talk to you about.
Go on.
Okay, so have you ever heard of this idea of using orgasms during the process of manifestation?
I would like to say that I haven't, but it came up very recently in a podcast that was sent to me by my husband. He's gonna hate that I said that. I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet. I'm gonna tell you about, her after this, but, go on. Tell me more.
Okay, so I originally heard about this, I don't know, I mean, probably a couple of years ago, just in passing in the circles that I run with. And then about a year ago, I started to think like, well, what if I actually implemented some of this stuff? Now, when I say some of this stuff, I don't mean that I actually researched any of it because you know how my two
Of
line
course
works.
not. Your brain doesn't work like that.
I just sort of do it. So
Do it, do it, do it. No, that's not the time. That's not
doing that, doing good. Okay, so okay, looking. Okay, never mind. All right, but okay, so first of all, let's back up. Uh, When I taught manifestation for many, many, many years, and one of the pieces around manifestation that people get hung up on is the embodiment. This is like feeling as though it's already there, right?
Yeah,
So
because their brain is
people
looking
can
for the evidence of things not yet seen.
Yes, and so one of the things that I realize is that it's so much easier for us to feel into fear or feel into lack than it
Yeah.
is to feel into pleasure or feel into abundance.
Yep.
And so the one time for me when it's really, really easy for me to let go of, resistance and really enjoy pleasure is during sex.
Makes
Now,
sense.
the reason why I'm sharing this first is because a lot of women that I work with are not in that space with sex.
Yeah.
They are having a really hard time, like, receiving pleasure. They have a hard time being in the moment. A lot of them are disassociating. They're maybe in their mental space, like they kind of leave the physical realm and go more into the mental realm. So they're thinking about all the things they need to do instead of like the sex they're having or their
Yeah.
like, yeah, so,
All the conditioning
um
of the reasons and the ways that we're supposed to be and do and smell and see and experience. Yep.
all that stuff, and so it gets in the way, so the first thing is you need to get over that, right? So the first part is really, really embodying, sexual play and really enjoying it, so I've already done all of that work, right? And so this is
No.
I wanna make sure people understand this is coming from somebody who already is in a space of it's easy for me to get into a pleasurable space around sex. So originally how I was doing this work was so I
I don't know what you're gonna say, but I'm like, "What is it?"
okay, so I self play a lot, okay, and I say a lot loosely here. I mean, I don't do it multiple times. And those times I do it multiple times a day, but it's not. I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say that I'm rubbing the bean 24/7, but like generally speaking, I will orgasm at least once a day. If it doesn't happen, then usually when I do find time to, I'll do it like a few times till I catch up. So
I had no
so
idea. My mind
uh,
hold on, let me just, like, pause on that for a second.
Okay.
Because I've known you for so long and I didn't know this about you, but now, like, rewinding back across, like, 10 plus years, things make so much freaking sense. Okay,
Well,
okay,
for
okay,
one,
I'm caught back up.
it's it's a great stress reliever. It's amazing for serotonin production and
Serotonin.
then I I noticed that I drop weight easier when I'm having, regular orgasms.
That
So,
makes sense.
and
Cortisol and all that stuff.
yeah, and I have gate 41, which we've talked about is really big on sexual fantasy. And so, of course, if you're going to spend time fantasizing, you might as well have the physical aspect join you. So,
Okay.
okay, so this is really healthy, all right? This is really healthy practice. But so the way that I was originally the way that I was originally approaching it was I would right before I hit climax, I would just start thinking about and imagining all the things that I wanted to manifest. Okay? And this worked, right? There was like some things were easier than other things to manifest, right? But
Okay.
it sort of felt like there was the ability to tap into more power. It was almost like I can feel a source of power around this, but I
Okay.
I I wasn't quite tapping in. Okay, so then the other day I had my hypnotherapy session
Okay.
and released a bunch of stuff. And a lot of the stuff that I felt like that I don't like I don't see it, stuff that it's because you know how you don't really know how bad you feel until you feel good, and then you don't really
Oh,
know, yeah, and then you until you feel great, you don't even realize that good's not even what you want, right? And so there's like, shit, I just lost my train of thought.
so you can tap into this thing. It started with
Oh,
your hypnotherapy session, which for those of you who are, like, listening later, that's a couple episodes ago, so go catch up. But anyway.
yes. So I released a lot of like this like shame and guilt and
Sure.
really really what I think it is I released the part of me that learned to be afraid of some of the emotions that go through my body.
Okay.
So there was a lot of conditioning around certain emotions and it was because my parents didn't like me to exhibit those emotions. So those emotions I had to like bury and hide.
Okay.
Okay, so going through that process, it wasn't like a logical process of I'm no longer gonna let this. It literally just stopped bothering me. So like I noticed that now when I get triggered, I can feel the trigger, I can feel the energy in my body, but I don't have that same gut reaction to dislike it. Okay, so I started
So
to go ahead.
so it sounds like rather than, like, having the trigger and then going through the cascade of, like, a typical reaction, you're having the trigger and you're recognizing it and then being able to kind of, like, float above it and observe it,
Yes.
instead. Yeah, okay.
Yes. As what it truly is,
Right.
which it's energy, right? It's a
Bubbling
power.
up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's power, it's electricity. And so before where that electricity would make me feel really uncomfortable and I had associated all of these stories to what it means when I feel that energy. Now there's other stories there and I didn't have to reframe the stories. It was almost like a remembrance. Once the gunk was away, I remembered what that energy actually can be used for.
Mm.
So there's like this way that we can use low vibrational energy. And I'm just speaking from my experience here, right? But there was this way that we can use this low vibrational energy to create a power within us. And so what this looked like was the other day I'm in the bedroom by myself doing my little fun stuff and
Okay.
all of a sudden my gut was like pull up that energy. And normally I don't think about what I was triggered by when I'm like doing the thing, right? But so I
Okay.
started to think about this. I started to pull that energy back into my body. I started to feel the triggering feels, right? And it was like I imagined all of that energy kind of going into this ball and then the overwhelming urge was to bear down and push the same way that I did when I delivered Gabe.
This
So,
is so crazy. Okay, we need to come back to Lenny after this, but keep going.
okay. Okay, so my first birth with Layla was, epidural, didn't really feel anything. At one point, she was like, bear down and push, even if you can't like feel or experience anything, just do the action. Well, with Gabe being a home birth, all natural, there was a there was a way that like the contraction would create this pain that was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. And then
Mhm.
that pain would sort of transmute and turn into power, and then that power fueled me to push him
Yeah.
out. And so it reminds me of, for those of you that have not delivered a baby, think about when you're constipated and you're taking a and there's like before the shit has passed a certain spot on the bungholio, you can like push out and then go, oh wait, no, this hurts, and kind of like swallow it back in, and then push out and go swallow it back in. And there's like, but then there's a point of no return
You
where
know what?
you
I feel this point of no return with you right now because I did not know that this is what we are getting into, and the point of no return is just like boom, 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 boom in my chest.
point of no return was months ago. You should have thought about this.
Okay,
Um, but okay, so then there's like this point. I know people know what I'm talking about. There's this
we
point of
do.
no return. Well, now it's like there's pain here, and unless you push through the pain, it's going to be painful whether you push or not. So it's like you use that to like push, right? So in this moment, I'm talking about shit and orgasm. My husband can definitely not listen to this.
Your husband, my husband will lose his shit.
Okay, so that's a whole nother kink. We're not talking about that. Okay, so in this moment, as I'm, pleasuring myself, I just have this gut instinct to recall all that emotion, and then like perceive or push that emotion down into my womb space
You
as I'm having this play. And two things happened. The first thing that happened was the orgasm was way intense. So as we already discussed, I'm pretty much a pro.
a seasoned, practiced pro.
He is a pro. And so to feel something this intense, and the only difference was it was, intentionally pushing energy into it. That was cool in and of itself. But then the next morning when I woke up, it was April 7th, and you know what happened April 7th, which
Yeah.
was yesterday.
It
And
was just
all of
like milestone on milestone on milestone on celebration of, like, all the magic that just kind of all came together, like, click, 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 click.
it's insane. And so, there's levels to this, right? Like the first level to me is getting your mind, your body, your physical body and your energetics all on the same page. And we talk about this in our signature program Up Level. We dive even deeper into it, into our signature program Self. Like there's an embodiment there of like getting all the three pieces together. This this wouldn't work, I don't think, if you're energetically feeling it but your body's not, going through the
You couldn't,
act of
you couldn't.
that climax. What'd you
It's
say?
just like when you're in your mind and you can't possibly take yourself over the edge because your mind won't allow you, like, your mind isn't on board with the 3.
Yes, but then there's also a way that we can use the mind to think of something that does throw us over the edge, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so it's like, and then there's things that we can do physically to ourselves to get us out of the mood, and then there's things we can physically do to get us in the mood. And
Yes.
so when we think about the things, and this is going back to what I was saying earlier, which is I think we manifest the things that we don't want to manifest so much easier because it's easier for us to embody that feeling of this isn't going to work out, or that disappointment. It's always easier to call in an experience that we've already had on some level than to create a new. And so it almost seems like not only does orgasm get to be the back door that helps us to let go of that, because I don't know about your sex life, but in my sex life there's such a paradox there of you bring these things that outside of the bedroom would not seem very, you know, pleasurable, and then you bring them into the bedroom, and there's this way that just because you're in the act of sex, all of a sudden this thing that you don't necessarily like outside of the bedroom is really thrilling in the bedroom.
Yeah.
And so to me, the space of sex is like a back door to get I didn't mean that, but it's like a
I'm like,
backdoor way.
somebody somewhere is pausing this every, like, 3 or 4 seconds like a 12-year-old. There's just
Yeah,
so
I
many
was
trigger
laughing.
words where
You
they're like,
said
"Ah, ha,
back
ha, does
door.
she know what she's done?"
There's this backdoor process that I use with clients where sometimes when they try and face a trigger head on, they can't because it's so triggering and overwhelming that they have to use the backdoor method,
Yeah.
which is like thinking about it in a different way to approach the subject without it being head on. This is why I love parables. This is why I love metaphors and analogies. It's because we get to go there without actually going to that one thing. It's like we look at it from a different lens. And so sex for me has been such it's been such a great backdoor for me to use because there's a lot of things that I've been able to process during sex that I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable processing in everyday life. So, like,
Mhm.
anger is one of them. Surrender is another one. Control, right? All of these things that I can feel bubbling up inside of me, and it's like in the bedroom they get to be these safe places for me to release this. But I say this all because in the past, I have only allowed really positive emotions to come through during sex. And in this way, it felt like I was able to process this negative emotion out of my body, but do it in such a way where it actually becomes a power source to my energetic womb so that it's giving power and life to the things that I'm creating.
Okay.
Are you thinking about trying it now?
No, I'm actually thinking about okay, what I'm thinking about is Lenny and
Okay.
this technique that she was talking about, like, literally just a couple days ago, and I would have never have thought to use the technique during sex or for manifestation, but I can see I have done it for other things, like, to process emotions that were, like, negative or process emotions that were, like, unsettling or just didn't even like, when you pick up emotions that aren't yours, but they feel like they're yours? So I've used
Yes.
it to process those emotions recently, and it's so it's so quantum, it happens so fast, the way it collapses and dissipates, but it retains the energy, and so, like, without getting all the way into that, because that's, like, a whole 'nother thing, you're basically collapsing the emotions, if you will, into this, like, white ball, and then you're, like, womb dropping them. And so it's almost like if you've ever, like, tried to pull emotions out of yourself that, didn't belong to you, like, you empathetically picked them up from somebody else, and then when you, like, pull them out, they're like they're so big that all of a sudden you're like, "Ugh, it left a spot, now I'm tired." But when you drop them into the light and then you, basically drop them into your womb, it just transmutes the energy. So you retain the energy without having to retain the negative emotion of it, and so, like, it's it just seems to me, and I never thought I would say this, Sarah, I'll be honest. It's like our womb is just like our wombs are just this, like, magic portal that we don't even like, we're barely scratching the surface of understanding the power that they hold.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that there's a reason why women tend to process more emotion than men naturally,
Mhm.
because I think that the emotion is the power source for the womb's creation. I can
Mm,
also look back at my life on on the times where I was dealing with infertility, which infertility is just my inability to create, right? But if
mhm.
it's like a physical manifestation of my inability to create. But when I think back to those times in my life, it was when I was the most emotionally restrictive, like when I was bottling up my emotions the most. And I'm not talking about positive emotions here. I was bottling up my negative emotions and I was not allowing myself to feel those negative emotions. I was caught up in that, no, I'm a positive person. I can't be feeling this way. It's wrong to feel these things. All of that connecting to what was discovered inside of my hypnosis therapy session. But there's this way that I believe our energy can be transmuted into creation itself, and that by us, you know, not knowing how to use these emotions, not knowing how to convert them into this energy, we're really missing out on the things that we are designed to create.
That's crazy to think, like, I know there's been all kinds of studies that talk about as humans how we only use such a small percentage of our brain day to day, right? And some people, they don't just use their left hemisphere, they don't just use your right hemisphere. Figured out how to use like both sides of their brain like very efficiently, right? And so they're maybe like firing on more cylinders. But there I've never seen a study on something like this, and it's to me, it feels very similar, right? Like, we're just not leveraging everything that we've been given as women or as humans, but, in this case, as women.
Absolutely. You know what's interesting? This is reminding me of a conversation that I accidentally, had once, where we were talking about so we have a top head, right? And our head contains ideas, right, through the mind, the brain, and
Yep,
then these
yep,
ideas get transmuted through our mouth, and when we
okay.
speak, it can actually create. And so then
Yeah,
we
100%.
made this like connection between the top head and the bottom head. So if your brain and your womb, put them in the same place. So what I think about, the ideas that I think about in my headspace up on the top are the things that I'm feeling in my womb down below. And the lips, the lips on the top head that speak, and out of the mouth comes these beautiful creations we call words, and they actually have power to create. Now think about what
I
comes out,
cannot,
you know what I mean?
I
But it
cannot.
it's I mean, it sent me down this rabbit hole of looking at the anatomy of the body and how similar the bottom half anatomy actually matches the top half anatomy, and it just wonder if, like, you know how they say the your sacral, like, your gut is your second brain? Like,
Uh-huh, yeah.
what if these things are working very much like each other? And the way that we've identified and already spoke about how people are overusing the mental plane, maybe this isn't really as, convoluted or as crazy as it may sound. Maybe it's literally that we have also we have a mental headspace, but we also have an emotional headspace, and we also have a you know what I mean? Like there's other aspects of our body that are doing things that we're already used to. We're just doing them on different planes in different ways.
I don't think it's that crazy, and I don't think it's that crazy because when I think even back to, like, my experience or, like, the experiences of friends, it's like I don't know how old you are, a couple years younger than I am, and I can't tell you how many friends I have had in the course of the last, I don't know, 5 to 7 years that have had trouble getting pregnant. And the moment that the woman, like, slows down and stops overthinking everything and is just sitting in her creativity, she's sitting in her flow, she feels more aligned. And this isn't to say that this happens every time, but how many times has it happened where all of a sudden it's just like magic and she gets
Mhm.
pregnant, right? And so she's not really using her brain on her head, she's using her brain in her emotions, she's using her brain in her soul. I don't think it sounds that crazy. It doesn't sound that crazy at all to me. It's just not something that is widely talked about. And it's certainly not talked about with 2 heads and 2 lips and 2 sets of mirrored anatomy.
Oh, man. Oh, man. It just made, like, to me, like, like, we have 2 ears on either side of our mind, and what goes in those ears can affect what is being created in the mind, right? And then you think we have 2
Yeah.
ovaries, and those ovaries are feeding the womb, and what leaves the ovaries and goes into the womb plants like seeds, the same way the things that we heal plant as seeds in our mind. Like, there's just so
Yeah.
much. To me, it's just very easy to see those patterns there.
Mhm.
And so then I've done so much mind work that it's like, okay, how can I take that mind work that I've done and apply that to womb work? Like, what if there's an actual way where we can go in and clean up our womb space the same way that we clean up our headspace. And maybe the same way that when we first start working on human design, when we first start working on personal development, and we
Mhm.
realize that there's all these cobwebs and yuckiness in our mind that's not serving us, old memories, old belief systems, old stuff that's not serving us. When we go into a womb space, God, could you imagine the cobwebs in there? Can you imagine like the icky things that we're holding on to, the experiences that we're holding on to in there? And if we've already seen how much powerful we become as humans when we can go in and rewire the brain, get rid of the things that are not serving us, start to fill our heads with things that are serving us. What happens when we do that to our womb space?
I can actually imagine that very clearly because when I have had IST sessions in the past, I mean, you and I have talked about this, like, I feel them in my body so profoundly. Like, I've had I've had times where it feels like samskaras or, like, emotional wounds, right? It's almost like they have, like, tentacles and they're pulling, like, from my toes, up my calves, through my knees, up my thighs, and then it's like they come out, and at the end of the IST session, if you would have asked me before I, like, actually opened my eyes and looked down, I would have thought for certain that there was a piece of my leg missing because it felt so hollow where that heaviness had been before, and obviously this is an example using a leg and not necessarily a wound, but I'm like, I've felt these things in my body where the samskaras have lifted, and you didn't. It's like you don't even know that it's heavy or that you're carrying that additional schmutz in your body until all of a sudden it's gone and it feels light, and then all of a sudden the light feels like that's the way it was always supposed to have been.
Mhm. It reminds me of when I first lost weight, and, it was like I didn't realize how much the extra weight was putting pressure on my lower back, and how much the weight in my chest was hurting my upper back because I was leaning forward, and there was all of these ways that my body was being impacted, but I didn't necessarily notice it because it was every single day that was just me. It was just me getting up and me getting down. But now that I've lost weight, right, if I was to pick up dumbbells and carry around those dumbbells every day, I'd be like, "Oh my god," I would notice that weight being
Yeah.
picked back up again because it's no longer a part of who I am, it's been shed, and you don't realize how heavy you've gotten until you feel that lightness.
That's so crazy. Like, I think about picking up a 30-pound dumbbell and carrying it around with me, and I'm like, "Nope, 1 out of
Nope.
10, don't recommend, can't imagine carrying it around with me," but we carry weight like that. We carry emotions like that. We carry trauma and gunk and stuff like that without even thinking about it. But then once it's
Mhm.
gone, you're asked to pick it up again, and you wouldn't think twice about declining that request. That's crazy. I
Yes.
never thought about that like that.
Yeah. So, you're welcome
Yeah.
for bringing us in all that business yesterday because I decided I
Wait till I tell my grandmother that the way that we got all that business is, this the
yeah,
content of
through
this podcast.
masturbation.
She's gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing with your life? You need to go to church."
It's so interesting how there are people that I am around in, like, I call them my high vibe circle, where, these women who are designing and creating and curating these lives that people can only dream of, and
Yep.
how many of them are talking about their sexuality, their pleasure, masturbating, like it's so funny. I'm in this group and they will literally be like, today's my highest sales day this year. And how I spent this morning was I gave myself a bath, I lotioned myself up, I pleased myself. It's like all these self-care, these pleasurable things that they're doing, is drawing in all of this. And again, it's not necessarily the thing they're doing as much as it is the energy that doing that thing has allowed them to embody.
It makes perfect sense, actually, because feminine energetics says you need to receive, right? And all of the things that you just listed off, she's literally preparing herself to receive.
Yes, and let's just have this conversation really second. Most women who most women that I've talked to, including myself until I figured this out, we approach sex from masculine energy, not from feminine energy.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mas- Masculine energy is when I take action for a result, and feminine energy is when I am being, which allows me to receive. And so like
Perfect.
if you're thinking about like feminine energy doing sex, one of the things that commonly comes to my mind is laying back and letting him, go down there. And because there's nothing that you're doing, right? You're just relaxing and you're just receiving. Now, most people can't do that. Most people are then in their head thinking about, oh my God, and is it okay
Immediately.
down there? Did I shave down there? And what does it smell like down there? And this and that and the other thing. And the reason why they're there is because they're in their masculine energy of I'm supposed to do something in order to be worthy of what gift I'm receiving right now. And if they don't feel like they've done enough to receive it, I didn't shower, I didn't shave, I didn't this, I didn't that, then they're going to talk themselves out of being able to receive the thing because they haven't done enough work for it yet. So we see this when I talk to women about their sexual experiences with their husbands and they're like, I'm in my head the whole time. Do I need to move my body so I look a certain way? What do I have to do to hurry up and get him to go? They're in their brains thinking about what actions do I need to take to get this result? And the result is not pleasure usually. The result
Mhm.
is to get it done,
Get it
to be
over
out
with.
of this. It's such a different experience when you can flip into your feminine state of just allowing yourself to receive. Can I just receive this pleasure? Some of the ways that I can tell whether I am in a space of receiving or not is how I respond to certain things. So if somebody gives you a compliment and you immediately come up with reasons why you don't deserve that compliment. So if like, wow, you look beautiful today, and you're like, oh my God, I haven't even showered yet. See how you've
Hmm.
associated an act that makes you worthy of that compliment? And that's masculine energy. Or if somebody comes to you and gives you a compliment and you immediately give the compliment right back. So they're like, wow, I really love hanging out with you. And you say, I really like hanging out with you. It's this, oh my gosh, in order for me to receive, I must give. This is a very masculine way of thinking. If you sit down to take a break, rest, and 30 minutes later you get up and you feel worse than when you sat down and you're not actually able to give yourself to receive the rest, right? You're not actually able to receive it. It's because in your mind you don't think you deserve the rest because you still have things left on your list to do. So this idea that I'm not allowed to receive until I've given enough, right? I'm not allowed to receive until I've given enough. There's so many things that I can point out right now that are popping in my head about how we are conditioned to believe these things. But at the end of the day, we've been conditioned to believe this, and this just isn't true. It just isn't true. There are ways where we can relax and just allow ourselves to receive without having to be giving in that moment.
I'm gonna be honest, Sarah. My mind is immediately stuck because I'm from the Midwest on, "Oh my gosh, that's such a cute jacket. You would never believe I got it on sale at TJ Maxx for whatever, 29.99. Can you believe it? It was such a good deal." My brain is, like, so stuck on it because you couldn't possibly pay full price for something. You couldn't possibly buy something like a full priced whatever at Nordstrom and that was, like, a good thing, right? Like, that's the immediate conditioning that my mind goes to. It's like stuck on a little like tick, 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 tick. And how many times I've heard that, how many times I've said it is to say to me that's like how many people have you turned away or how much resistance have you offered up when somebody tried to give you something? That's a really great reflection question. We should put that in the show notes. How many times have you deflected a compliment or positive praise? Today, let's recap, shall we? You now know things about Sarah that you never thought you would know before. This is just probably the very beginning of the Not Safe for Work episodes here on the Soul Led Duo podcast. You, in the same way that you clear the thoughts out of your brain that are no longer serving you, you have the same opportunity to clear things out of your body that are no longer serving you. And when you do, you will leave spaces in your body that now feel light and empty and happy and joyful. And also, for all of our women listeners, which I feel like is probably most of you out there, your womb is a sacred place that holds magical manifestation powers. So, without further ado, I am going to list all kinds of goodies for you in the show notes, and we'll catch you later. Love you. Mean it. Bye. We hope today's show resonated with you. If you want to be the first to hear about our upcoming shows, Make sure you follow the Soul Led Duo podcast on YouTube and wherever you catch your podcasts. Check out darcieandsarah.com for show notes, your free human design chart, and other goodies. And we'll catch you next time. Love you, mean it. Bye.